The river that can't be touched. They warned us without words. There were no signs, fences, or explicit warnings, only silence. A silence that seemed to press on the ears until even breathing sounded strange. The river stretched through the valley like an ancient wound, too still, too dark, absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. Approaching it caused immediate discomfort, as if the air grew heavier with each step, compressing the chest and slowing the body. Marcus felt it first, an uncomfortable pressure behind his eyes. Emily realized the forest had fallen completely silent. Danny tried to break the tension with a joke, but the sound died before it could echo. The water didn't move. It didn't react. It just waited. The villagers never crossed it. They took long detours, avoided looking at it, spoke softly, as if pronouncing its name were an unwelcome invitation. As dusk approached, the river seemed closer, though it hadn't moved, as if the distance was being reduced by something beyond space. Instinct whispered the same thing to all of us. The danger wasn't in touching. The danger was in being noticed. We placed the equipment on the ground with excessive care, slow, almost ceremonial movements, as if any abrupt gesture could awaken something hidden. The surface remained smooth, without reflection, without apparent depth. Emily reached for the recorder and hesitated, overcome by an inexplicable fear. Danny's camera malfunctioned, the image dissolving whenever the river filled the frame. Marcus stared at the water and felt his thoughts being pressed as if something were testing the limits of his mind. The longer we stayed there, the more it seemed that the valley existed around the river and not the other way around. Night fell without warning, bringing the certainty that whatever inhabited that river had already noticed our presence. The silence thickened, swallowing distant sounds, leaving only our breathing and the unsettling sensation of something listening beneath the surface. Waiting. Always patient. Always attentive. It had time. Plenty of time. Darkness didn't arrive gradually. It simply replaced the light, as if someone had switched off the world around the river. The sky still held bluish hues, but there, near the water, everything seemed darker, denser, as if the night had chosen that spot to concentrate. No insect sang. No leaf stirred. The silence wasn't an absence of sound. It was presence. A deep hum began to emerge, too low to be heard clearly, too loud to be ignored, vibrating deep in her skull. Emily felt her thoughts slow down, become repetitive, as if something were rearranging her mind without permission. Danny tried to take a few steps back, but his body felt heavy, his muscles resisted, as if the ground were pulling his legs back. The camera in his hand malfunctioned again, freezing in distorted frames whenever the river entered the field of vision. Marcus had the clear sensation of being watched, not from the banks nor from the forest, but from below, from within the still water. There were no visible eyes, yet the certainty was absolute. Footsteps echoed behind them, though no one had moved. The distance to the river seemed to change on its own, shortening, compressing the space in an impossibly narrow way. Approaching wasn't a conscious decision, it was a consequence. Instinct screamed to retreat, but the body obeyed something deeper, more silent. No one dared touch the water. Everyone knew, without knowing how, that contact wouldn't cause immediate pain or death. What the river offered was worse. Erasure. Not of the body, but of that which made someone recognizable. The certainty spread among them like a shared thought. If someone touched the river, they wouldn't be taken away. They would be replaced. Night fell completely, and the river became darker than the absence of light itself, a hollow outline cutting across the valley. Then the reflections began. They weren't clear images, but delayed distortions, movements that didn't match real time. Emily saw her silhouette emerge closer to the bank than she actually was, her lips moving in a whisper she hadn't uttered. Danny heard his own voice behind him, repeating thoughts he had never spoken aloud, revealing doubts and fears he believed buried. For long seconds, Marcus saw nothing, only the still surface, which terrified him more than any vision. When it finally appeared, it wasn't a reflection, but altered memories. Personal recollections displayed incorrectly, corrected, as if the river were adjusting its history. The air became heavy, difficult to breathe, each breath a conscious effort. The feeling of mental invasion was clear, intimate, impossible to ignore. The river didn't show fear to frighten, it observed to learn. Every reaction, every hesitation, every thought expressed seemed to be recorded. Together they understood that the river didn't feed on bodies, but on identity. It needed to understand who was there to decide what could be taken. The bank began to feel unstable, the ground slightly soft beneath their feet, as if reality itself were thinning near the water. The hum increased, now rhythmic, synchronized with the heartbeats. The river remained still, but everything around seemed to bend towards it. And then it became clear that this wasn't an encounter, it was a process. If this interpretation is making you rethink this story, leave a comment below with your perspective. These videos are meant to provoke reflection, and I read all the comments. And if this type of content interests you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Panic didn't come all at once. It seeped in slowly, like icy water rising up the legs until it reached the chest. The buzzing grew louder, pulsing in the same rhythm as the hearts, imposing a cadence of fear impossible to ignore. The shadows at the river's edge began to move shapelessly, rising from the surface only to sink again like incomplete attempts at existence. Danny instinctively recoiled and stumbled, his hand scraping against a sharp stone. Blood gushed but didn't fall to the ground. He was pulled toward the water, diverting his trajectory as if the river exerted its own gravity. Emily screamed, and the sound returned before she finished the sentence repeated by the water with an empty mechanical tone, devoid of emotion. Marcus finally understood. The river wasn't avoided because it killed. It was avoided because it continued. Everything that touched it remained there, in another form, diluted, rewritten, trapped beneath the still surface. The stories of the missing made sense now. They hadn't vanished. They had been incorporated. Their identity ripped away, fragmented, transformed into a silent current. The ground near the bank gave way slightly, as if reality were losing its consistency. Approaching was no longer a choice, it was an attraction. And the river seemed satisfied. They left before dawn, without looking back, carrying a sense of loss they couldn't name. The river remained identical, smooth, dark, untouched, as if nothing had happened. The locals said the water level never rose, although something was always being added. After that night, Marcus stopped wearing his watch, bothered by the constant feeling of being out of sync. Emily never turned on the recorder again, fearing she would hear something she didn't remember saying. Danny erased all the images, except for a single frame that insisted on reappearing, showing 3 silhouettes on the bank when only 2 should exist. The river remained there, invisible to maps, ignored by those who knew too much. It doesn't call, it doesn't pursue, it doesn't move. It waits for curiosity to do the work. And those who resist its touch never truly leave it, because some boundaries, once approached, begin to follow you. The river doesn't need to be touched to leave a mark on someone. It only needs to be seen, it only needs to be perceived. And on silent nights far away, when the surrounding water remains strangely still, the feeling returns. As if something, somewhere, is still learning who you are. If you enjoyed this approach and want to continue exploring stories that are almost never told this way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now, click on the video that's appearing on the screen. It directly complements what you just watched and may completely change the way you see this story.